Colorado Avalanche are a team that really hasn't drafted a whole lot in the last few years, but for good reason. They've been really, really good in the NHL, but in the last couple of years, they've added some really interesting players that I think make them a better prospect pipeline than many others would think. So, welcome to the Prospect Pipeline show here at Scouching, where we review NHL teams' prospects before the season starts. And with the Colorado Avalanche, there's a lot of really interesting names, but before we get into it, I want to define what a prospect is in my work and what the tiers we're really looking at here mean. So a prospect is a player within 5 years of their first year of NHL draft eligibility who are also not on an NHL roster for more than a full season. And the tiers for us, we start at the franchise level, which is what it sounds like. A player you never ever trade, you hope you have them on the roster for 15 years, their entire career, you don't look the same without them, you know what I'm talking about. Next we have the core tier, which is just players you really love having on your roster as long as you possibly can. They may not be that franchise level premier talent, but they're not far behind and they're very important to your roster. Then you have your depth players that round out your roster in many different roles. They could be second, third, fourth line guys, but you can rely on them to play 82 games and not look out of place at all. Then you have your maybes, who are guys that maybe are on the outside looking in, guys who might have a lot of upside but some question marks, guys who may not have a lot of upside but may not quite have enough to break into a bottom six role in the NHL one day, but it's not impossible. And then at the bottom we have everyone else, which is what it sounds like. So we go straight to the depth category for Colorado, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing at all. They've got 5 players in here, which is pretty solid for a team that recently has won a Stanley Cup and has been a competitive NHL team for years. We want to lead things off with Callum Ritchie and Mikhail Gulyayev, first round picks from a couple of seasons ago, and I'm a big fan of both of these players. Callum Ritchie has taken a big step in his development, and I think he's gotten a lot more high-end pace in his game. He's skating a lot better, and he's combining that with his creativity and his skill level to just be a lethal junior player. We'll see how he does in his last season with the Oshawa Generals this year, but I'm really excited to see what he can do once he's done with the Oshawa Generals in the OHL. Mikhail Gulyayev, in my view, took a big step forward last year, playing full-time in the KHL, and when I caught him, certainly looking like Mikhail Gulyayev. He is a rocket ship out there. He's tons of fun to watch. I have really high hopes for him. I had him ranked really high in the draft when he went, and I'm really happy Colorado drafted him, and we'll see how things go for him with Omsk again this season, and I'm hoping he becomes a pretty premier KHL offensive defenseman. The rest of the depth category are all goaltenders. Trent Miner had a great season in the AHL last season with a .930 save percentage, and sure, he could be called up in a depth role relatively quickly, I would think, in a pinch. You've got Ilya Nabokov of Metallurg Magnitogorsk, who I believe will be there one more season and then very likely, or at least should, come over to North America and might be able to fill their NHL net sooner than you might think. As well, you've got Ivan Yunin in here, and this is an optimistic one for me, but I love Ivan Yunin. Every time I watched him last year, he was just a ton of fun to watch, super athletic, super mobile, and I think he's a guy you just let march up the depth chart in Russia until he's a KHL guy, and if that's when he's 25 years old, great. You'll have a goaltender in 7 years, and if you don't have to worry about your goaltender in 7 years from now, then you've done really well 7 years prior. And now we get to the maybes category, and leading the way here, I've downgraded Jean-Luc Foudy from a depth player to a maybe. I still remain somewhat optimistic about him, and I've really liked what I've seen of him in the AHL, but he just hasn't quite got the physical tools for an NHL top 6 or top 9 job, at least not right now, and we'll see how this season goes. Draft picks from this past season, Will Zellers and Torrey Pittner and Christian Humphreys are in here. I think these are guys that have, at least in Zellers and Humphreys' case, a lot of upside, but maybe a long way to go there. I am really interested in Torrey Pittner as being a depth NHL defenseman one day, but I'm not quite sure it's quite all there just yet. Sean Behrens is down here. I like Sean Behrens a lot, but I do wonder how his game projects to North American pro hockey. In a season, I could very easily see him being a player that jumps up into the depth tier on this list. And then you have everybody else, and a lot of these guys are just the older players they drafted a while ago who may barely be eligible as a prospect anymore and might not likely look like NHL players, or just players where I think they just have a bit of a longer way to go here. Out of all of these, I'm hopeful that Oscar Olausson can capture a little bit more of that skill level and that offensive game that I saw a few years ago that just seems to have stagnated. Guys like Max Coran are down here where I'm not really sure there's an NHL player there, but it's not impossible. He's got the advantage of youth. He is one that I could see bumping up the pyramid over the next couple of seasons. but these are just players that I think have a bit of a long shot to make it to the NHL. Doesn't mean they won't get there, doesn't mean it's impossible, but I just think statistically the odds are not necessarily in their favor. And that's it for Colorado. All things considered, for a team as good as they are in the NHL, they're not looking too bad in terms of their future, in my opinion. They've added some really nice talent over the last few years, and we'll see how things go. If you liked it, you can click like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another video. If you really liked it, you could go to Scouching.ca and get a subscription where you'll get early access to videos, exclusive written content, a Discord server, data tables for prospects around the world, and plenty of other cool stuff that you can check out there. So that does it for the Colorado Avalanche, and up next we're going to be looking at the Minnesota Wild.